Welcome to the SLP Business Podcast. The SLP Business Podcast. The SLP Business Podcast. I'm so excited to dive in and talk to you today. We're talking about the hustle, and it has to do with confidence. It's just about that ability to connect with clients. All right, ready? Welcome to another episode of the SLP Business Podcast. My name is Ebony Green, and today I have an exciting guest to share with you. Her name is Hasina Echoles. She's one of my close friends and business besties. And Hasina is a 7-figure private practice owner in Florida. So let me go ahead and read her bio to you. Hasina Echoles is a licensed and certified speech-language pathologist and the CEO and founder of Global Speech and Rehab Services in Miami, Florida. With over a decade of experience, Hasina has built a thriving 7-figure speech pathology practice, leading a team of more than 16 speech pathologists who provide services in schools, at her therapy office, and through telehealth. Hasina is a proud graduate of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Program of 2021, the 2022 Enterprising Woman of the Year, and a Tory Burch Fellow. She currently serves as the president of the Florida Association of Speech-Language Pathologists, where she continues to advocate for professionals and the communities that they serve. Hasina's passions extend beyond her career, and she's a dedicated wife and mother of 3, a committed advocate, and a lover of community service and world travel. Her journey exemplifies the balance of professional success and personal fulfillment, making her an inspiring leader and a change maker in the field. So on today's episode with Hasina, we are going to be talking about building a legacy from startup to purchasing your own building for a clinic. Welcome to another episode of the SLP Business Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, my friend, Hasina Echoles. She lives in Miami, Florida, and she owns a private practice. And we're going to talk today about building a legacy from startup to making the ultimate boss move of purchasing a building for her clinic. Welcome, Hasina. Thanks so much for being here today. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you, Ebony. I am so excited to be here. I've listened to your podcast and I'm really honored to be a guest. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's get started. So you recently purchased a building for your clinic, which I think is just amazing. And it's something that I'm sure every entrepreneur aspires to. But I want to start at the beginning. What inspired you to transition from renting a clinic space to purchasing a building for your clinic?
Well, we have been renting for about 7 years. And at some point, it just started to make sense. And then I started thinking about really, what do I want at the end of the business? And what do I want my life to look like? And, how purchasing real estate could really benefit me. And so once I started thinking about it, and there was only upsides. And so at that point, I said, okay, we need to find something to buy.
And how big is your clinic? How many patients do you guys see?
Almost 2,700 square feet.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you purchased the 2,700 square feet building for your clinic. And then was your previous clinic the same size or was it smaller?
It was about the same size. So we knew that this was the perfect fit because it was about the same size.
It is a big move. And obviously, it's an upgrade from renting, but I bet it was scary. There were some things that you had to go through to finally get, your own clinic and purchase it. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But when it came to making the decision, you said that it really was about finding the space that was going to be similar to the space that you already had. What about the location? Was there anything different in the location that you chose?
The location was a little bit different because this it's actually not that far from where we are. It was very similar.
Oh, okay.
The place that we were at for years and they just wouldn't sell. And so we found someone that's very similar. It's not that far away, which was perfect for us because that means that our clients don't have to go too far away. And so it actually not that different. Very similar.
It's always nice when you don't have to make a huge, transition into like a new area of town or a space that is laid out differently or different amount of square feet. So that's wonderful. I used to have 2 clinic spaces. One of them was very small. It was like it was 3 treatment rooms and a waiting room. So I think total was like 1,000 square feet. So pretty small. And then we moved into another space. And so now we have, I think about 2,500 square feet. And they were kind of, I would say maybe 10 or 15 minutes apart. But what I liked about having the bigger space was that I could fit everyone there, and we were able to keep adding on to that space. And then I eventually closed the smaller one down just because people for some reason preferred the bigger space, and it was renovated and really nice. So choosing like which location and, where clients were going to be more likely to come, that was hard initially. So it's nice that you didn't have to really think about being in a different area. Everything was pretty much in the same part of town. So that's nice. What were some key factors that you considered when you started thinking about purchasing? Like what were the things that you evaluated before making that decision?
So of course the finances. We are in Miami,
Yeah.
and really just expensive in general, right? And so how much is this going to cost? That's number one. Location, are we going to have to make a big move? Parking, because we have quite a few patients. So we found locations, but they didn't have good parking. So we needed parking. We needed location. We wanted to make sure that we were in a nicer area. So it's still in the same community, but you can be, in Miami, you can be 5 minutes up the road, and another property or another location is much better. So
Yeah.
we definitely make sure that we were, in a physically better space, even aesthetically where it looked, but we were in the same community serving the same people.
Very nice. Yeah. So you thought about the location, you thought about parking, all those things that would impact your client's experience, right?
Yes. Yes.
And how long did it take you to find the perfect space?
Over a year.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, it took over a year. And so there was a lot of, we really had to stay focused on the goal, because we're for a property and you're so excited and,
Right.
everything's ready to go. And then a month goes by, nothing.
Right.
2 months goes by, nothing. 3 months, 4 months. After 6 months, I started saying, is this really going to happen? Are we really going to be able to do it? And I said, okay, stay focused. The goal is to buy a place. It doesn't matter how long it takes. You have to wait for the right location, because some things came along and they weren't perfect. And not that anything was going to be perfect, but there were so many reservations, and it was just, okay, this doesn't feel right. Maybe the numbers are not right. The location is up the street, but look, there's not enough parking. So there was all of these things. And I would definitely say, I started to get discouraged after a while, but I stayed focused on the goal. And honestly, a year later, finally, the perfect space came up. And so I think it was just really a testament to patience in terms of not, being so eager to get something done that we ended up picking the wrong place.
Right. Were you working with a realtor, or were you looking for locations yourself?
Working with a realtor.
Okay.
'Cause that was really important. And that was really, really instrumental in getting us at the closing table, getting us so close. We'll talk about that later. But we worked with a realtor. We would look for places, because there's places that you can look online and look for property. So we would look, and if we would send it to her. But mainly we worked with a realtor.
Oh my gosh, a year? That just seems like,
Yeah.
like I would feel the same way. Like, oh, this is not meant to be. We just need to keep.
Yes, I started to feel that. I was like, maybe, maybe it's not. And I just said, okay, we're not finding anything. That means it's not the right time.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad you found that. So a similar story for me is that, like I said, I had 2 clinic locations. I had this smaller one, and that was kind of my first clinic. And we started to outgrow it pretty quickly because it was so small, and I'd always wanted something bigger. So I found this other space actually before I found my clinic, the small one, and I was going to sign a lease on it, but then the government shutdown happened. I don't know if you remember way back when there was a government shutdown, and my husband advised me to not sign the lease on this bigger space because it was going to be more money, right? And one of the most expensive things when it comes to moving into a clinic is furnishing it. I don't know if you feel the same way, which we can talk about. but the
You
furnishings,
you can underestimate the cost of furnishings.
yeah. Yes. So I didn't think about all that. And so we decided not to sign the lease on that bigger space, but I would drive by it every single day. And it was actually like on the route from dropping my kids off to school. So I would be like, man, I got to pass this building to go up to the other building, and I'm like, one day I'm going to get this clinic. Right. So then COVID happened and my smaller clinic, I wasn't seeing patients in it. And I was like, maybe I could get a good deal on that other building if like they can't find anyone to rent it because of COVID. So I they still had the sign out there that said for rent. So I set up an appointment to go tour the space right after I was dropping my kids off at school and toured it. And it was nice. Like I'd already toured it before. It was exactly how it was before. Like nobody had moved in and it had been like 2 years or something like that. So nobody had moved in that entire time. So they were like, okay, we'll like make a deal because we want this place to be rented. And I still had my lease at the other place, but I was like, I really want this space. So I'm going to just sign the lease. This is like meant to be. It's available. They haven't had anybody else rent it. Like, let me just go ahead and see what happens. So I signed the lease and then I had both clinics and eventually I ended up closing the other one. I had I think only 6 months left on my lease. So it wasn't that bad. But yeah, sometimes you get discouraged because you feel like things just don't happen the way that you thought they would, and for me, it was like, okay, I probably will never get that space because at the time that I thought I was going to get it, I wasn't able to sign the lease. And then lo and behold, it was available. So you just kind of had to be patient, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And even with that, I think my very first office was probably about 150 square feet. It was a really, really small space. And then, kind of moving up a little bit, moving up, and then ultimately deciding on the purchase. And there's a lot because we were in a lease and our lease wasn't up for 6 months. And so, taking that into consideration, okay, we'll have a mortgage and then there's a lease and, so many things to consider. But we ended up getting out of our lease with just 1 month.
Oh, nice.
Yes. And actually that 1 month they agreed to keep the security deposit. So
okay. So it wasn't like you had to keep paying rent for all that time.
No. We successfully negotiated out of that. I was able to go into negotiations and get ourselves out. And the building had some issues and, I had problems. And so we kind of leveraged that in order to get out.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people don't realize that there is room for negotiation when you're doing commercial real estate deals.
Yes.
When you're renting your first clinic, try to negotiate free rent. My first, that space that I signed the lease on that was still available, I was still in that other lease. So I tried to negotiate at least a couple of months of free rent at the other place. And I was able to get that. So I didn't have to pay rent at both places for the first 2 months. So free rent is a great thing to negotiate into your contract.
We actually didn't negotiate too much on the purchase because we felt that we are still in a competitive market, believe it or not. And so we didn't go above asking, but we went right at asking. And typically my realtor she's phenomenal. And, when I said, do you think we should negotiate? She was like, well, it's a really good rate. And normally she negotiates the price of soda. So if she said that we're good to go, I trusted that. But I don't advise that. I would always say negotiate. Yeah. Because really, what is it that they say you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I don't like to negotiate at all. I'm like, just tell me what the price is. I don't want to have to go back and forth.
Yes, I'm like that too.
So yeah, so I totally get you found the place, it's a good rate. Yeah, that's fine.
I don't want to say desperate, but after a year,
we were
sabotage this deal. Let's just go with asking.
Yeah.
And see, let's just offer what they're asking and hopefully we'll get it.
Yeah, exactly. And you guys got it. So that's awesome.
Yes.
So I want to talk a little bit about kind of transitioning your team to your new office. What was that like?
It was moving just in general is a lot. So imagine moving that with a team of people and then of course moving the clients. I have a great team. So let me just say there, and that makes everything much easier.
Yeah.
came before we moved in. We had the space a few months before we moved in. There were some things that we needed to get organized, regulations, permits, and all of that stuff before we could move. And we came over, we toured the place. We did like a mini grand opening with the staff, and they really loved the place. And so they were actually eager. They were really excited to move because they love the new place way more than the old place. And we really had to be organized in terms of just making sure we had the dates organized, making sure that everybody, the team and the clients were ready for the transition. But it could have been way more difficult, but we have a great team. And so everyone kind of packed their stuff up when it was time to go. They put everything in boxes, labeled, the movers picked it up, dropped it off in the new location, got unpacked. And that was pretty much it. I may be overstating, it wasn't that simple in general, but we have a great team that really, really helps.
That is amazing. Yeah. And the team makes a huge difference. I wish I had as much help as I have now when I moved into the clinic that we have now, because back then it was like just me and one other person. So I was driving a U-Haul. I have like video of me driving a U-Haul and bringing stuff from our old clinic to our new clinic. And then there was like this gap where like half of the space was ready and then the other half wasn't because they were working on stuff. So I had to have movers like move everything off of the moving truck into this like storage area inside the clinic. And then I had to have them come back and move it out of the storage area into the other part of the clinic that was now done. So it was crazy.
It can. And even, you're saying you're driving the moving truck. I think that's how it is sometimes where, especially, in the beginning, we are doing whatever it is that we have to do, whether it's cleaning out, driving the U-Haul truck, whatever needs to be done.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's what it is to be an entrepreneur, right? You have to do it if nobody else is going to do it. So I drove the U-Haul. I was going to I remember I had to get a rug for our waiting room. So I was going to Lowe's and I had a rug in my car, trying to fit a huge rug in there. And I was just like, this is crazy, but who else is going to do it? So it got done, Let's talk a little bit about the financial part of it. Like if someone is looking to purchase a clinic or a building for their clinic rather than rent, how is that different financially than renting? Like, do they need to have more in savings? Do they need to be more careful with their spending before they close? How would you describe that experience?
That experience, that is an interesting experience because, of course, you're involved with a bank.
Yep.
And we're actually in a climate where banks are tightening up. They're not loosening up. So, I felt like we probably got more scrutiny than maybe we would have gotten in past years. And I feel like in general, they're just more skeptical of businesses that, businesses just in general, businesses that are buying. I feel like they're more comfortable with investors to say, okay, I'm going to buy this and I'll have someone else rent it versus, okay, I'm buying this for the purpose of my building.
Correct.
Of course, you definitely want to have savings, right? Just because you want to. If you're going to buy something, because buying and renting is a lot different. I remember when we first moved in, we were fixing something and my husband, he's so funny. He totally forgot. And I was like, okay, I need you to fix that because, spouses will be handy people.
Right.
It's like, I think you need to call maintenance. And I looked at him. I was like,
you are the maintenance.
Right. We both laughed about it. So everything is on you. So there's a huge responsibility. So you want to make sure that you have money saved because when something is going wrong, there's no one to call. You have to be financially responsible for that. And so you want to make sure that you have enough money to cover the mortgage, if you have association fees and any repairs that are needed, not just building out, but just day-to-day things that come up because little expenses add up. We keep a detailed spreadsheet of every single thing that was purchased and the cost, it adds up and adds up. So, just even also being aware of your finances, right? What can I actually afford? Just thinking about what's going to be affordable. I did make a conscious decision to pay more in mortgage than I paid in rent just because I said, okay, this is a long-term thing, right? Yeah. This is about legacy and this is about, we'll be able to rent it out later or sell it later. And so I was willing to stretch a little bit more than the rent to buy something. So number one, making sure your finances are in order, making sure, that you have money saved, making sure that you understand your capacity, building a relationship with a bank. Because I think we got financed through a bank that I've had a relationship with a few years. And so just even setting up that relationship and having, someone that was with us the entire time, it still wasn't easy in that case, but it was better because I had a relationship with the bank. I have the VP on my cell phone. I have the guy who's over the financing of commercial buildings. We have each other's cell phone numbers. So it was easier because a problem. They're calling me on the phone saying, Hasina, the underwriters need this. And I'm like, well, what should I do? And they're nice and they're walking with us along the way. So having a relationship with a bank is really, really important. And I think being patient, right? Don't overextend yourself. Make sure that you know what you can afford and be able to think about the long term, right? Because business in general, whether it's this one or a grocery store, times economies go up and down, businesses go up and down. And you want to make sure that no matter what, you're able to pay your mortgage because it's different than paying rent. And it feels heavy, right? We've only been here a few months and we got lucky. It just so happens that the cost of the mortgage is pretty much the same as the rent. So it's not different, but it feels different.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, you're really responsible for this.
You're really responsible for it. And if something breaks or whatever, it's on you.
Exactly. There are huge implications to making sure, you just everything, but it feels good. It feels good. So I think there's a lot of, and it took some time to get to this place because the bank, you have to, again, having your finances in order, meaning, having all your books up to date, making sure that you're filing taxes and making sure even that you understand the finances of your business, because the bank would ask a lot of questions about different things. Mm-hmm. And I to be able to explain that. Correct. Not just getting on the phone with my bookkeeper saying what, or the tax, which you need a good one on your team, right? Because they help keep all of those things in order. But understanding your business in the financial aspect, because when they would ask me a question about why this was some way, or what was this, or what was that, or, what do you expect to happen in the future? And, I was able to answer those questions right out because I have a very good understanding of our financial situation.
Right. Yes. And I tell people that all the time. Like, you don't realize how important it is to have your books in order and to have your financial house in order until you need to ask someone for money or ask for someone to invest in your business, because those are the first things they want to see. And so don't wait until you need the money or you need that investment. Start doing that now so you already have those things in order.
Yes. And actually, my good mentor told me, she said, when you need money, nobody will give it to you.
That is so true.
Make sure, and it's one of those things, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. I mean, it is really fundamental knowing your finances and understanding them when you're in business. But, we're speech pathologists, right? And so it's like we understand the business of speech, but then understanding finances and how a business works can be super scary. But I have invested a lot of time into a lot of programs and a lot of,
mentorship.
Education. Yes, to make sure that I understand all of these things.
No, I have done the same thing because you just never know. And you can't rely on other people to, know this information because you're the owner, you're the CEO. So you don't want to have, too many people in your financial information. You want to keep that as close as possible to you, and maybe an accountant. It's really up to you to know the answers to those questions, like you said. So yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. That was very comprehensive and eye-opening as to the financial part of owning a practice and buying a building. What are some lessons you learned from this experience?
That it's something that seems the obvious, something that seems straightforward isn't.
Yeah, right.
Because okay, we have this business, it's doing well, we can afford it, finance the building. And it was not that simple. So it was not that simple. And so just understanding patience, really, right? And how important it is to have your things in order, because not just your financials, because that's important. The bank is always going to want to see that. And if you don't have your finances in order, don't ask them for money, because they're not going to give. But even just other, having the business in order in terms of paperwork, just the basics of what do you need to run a business, because they will ask you for 1 million documents, and it's really good to be able, every time they ask me for a document, to just be able to open up my computer, click and send it.
There you go.
not having to go, looking for it or trying to do it afterwards. So making sure that, your business is in order, your paperwork is in order. And I learned that um, banks don't, commercial real estate is not that easy for banks. Um, and I think it's harder to get finance for commercial than it is for residential. And so
Interesting.
I think I just took for granted that it is harder.
Okay.
It just, they want more information, they want more documentation. Um, I learned that patience delayed is not denied, right?
That's a good one.
I learned
Yeah.
to be persistent in what I wanted, because and things are not always what they seem, for better or for worse, right? Because after 6 months, I literally almost threw in the towel.
Yeah.
And like, this is not, maybe it's just not time. But so I learned, I remember that you have to continue to be persistent. And when you're passionate about something, again, delayed is not denied. You have to, and sometimes things don't always go the way that you think they're going to go. And so if I said, okay, we're going to go down road A to get this done, we may have ended up going down B, C, or even D, and that's okay.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I love that patience, what is it? Delayed is not denied.
Yes.
Delayed is not denied. It just has to be the right timing. And you just never know. It might be a situation where it is straightforward, but most of the time when you're dealing with these banks, it's not. And I want to talk a little bit about, another aspect of purchasing and building that legacy. And that's, doing it as a woman of color, as a woman. Like, did you feel differently about this experience because maybe as a woman it was harder to get approved, or as a woman of color? Like, did that ever come up?
Oh, it came up a lot of times, and I think I think it came up throughout that process, right? And I kept, so because some of the things just didn't. They were asking for a million things, literally a million and one, and I kept saying, and one of the things that I think that they asked for is something that they call an abundance of caution, which basically, means that they wanted me to put up some personal assets, which my home.
Oh,
and
wow.
like, this loan is not that large. Like, what is this about? And I felt that you see me as more risky, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So you're trying to do everything that you can to minimize your risk. And I get it. A bank is a business, right? So I understand that. But some of these things, you're just going too far.
Okay.
Like, I'm not going to, if I don't pay you, take the building. But you can't.
Yeah. So they wanted your personal assets for collateral.
Yes, exactly. I mean, excess collateral as well, because it just doesn't make any sense. And I feel like that was the reason for that.
Wow.
I also that, like, you're asking for way too many things for this. It's just not making sense. And so, to the banker about it, I told them, and,
and it
people,
could, things
the way, because sometimes you have to be in that situation to understand, and it's hard for people to take your perspective. But it said no. Naturally, I said no.
Mm-hmm.
If that is what you want to make the deal, this deal is over. And sometimes you just have to be firm, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, and be willing to walk away, because and I have every intention on paying, and I know that I will, but at some point, like, this is just the principle. I'm not doing that. And I was willing to walk away from the deal and find another lender. And we were in crunch time, because we were where we had to submit, between your deposit, your escrow, and the contract. There's a time where you have to prove that you've been financed by the bank, or else, you can lose the contract. And so we were probably about 5 days out from that date. Wow. And I was willing to walk away even at that point and say, I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. So if this is what it's coming to, then this deal is over. And that was hard and scary.
Yeah.
Because, you don't know how they're going to say. They could call your bluff.
Yeah,
and
they
say,
could.
I'm not going to do it. But I think also that's a testament to me having a relationship with the bank and the people at the bank, because he said, you know what, I'm going back in there and I'm going to fight for you, and I'm going to keep going back and forth, and we're going to do everything that we can to make that happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you stuck to your guns, and you decided, and you stood your ground. And yes. I'm assuming that they allowed you to continue the deal without that
mm-hmm. They did.
Excessive collateral.
Yeah. So they did. They said, okay, they came back and they said, okay, we'll just figure it out. And then, a few days later, they sent over the official approval.
Okay. Wow. I bet that was like, finally, like, relief.
Hey, listen, every day of my life was stressful. like too. I mean, it took a lot. It really did. And going back through it, it just took a lot out of me day to day with this emotional roller coaster of, okay, we have everything that we need. We're going to get the approval by the end of the week. The end of the week comes and, oh, now they want something else. Oh, now it's this, is that. So it was like a constant emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I applied for a line of credit for my business because going back to what you said about getting the money before you actually need it, I was like, you know what? I probably should get a line of credit just in case I need it in the future. And so I went to the bank to apply for a line of credit, and just the amount, the questioning and like it felt as though I was like almost being scrutinized because I was going in to ask for this line of credit. And I had way more in the bank than the credit I was asking for. But they didn't just say, okay, like you have what you need, you're approved. Like they had to take a few days to think about it and have me send in all these different documents. And so I felt like, that could be possibly because I'm a woman that has this successful business, or, because my name is Ebony, and I'm not using that as the reasoning why. But a lot of times that is the experience that we have as women of color going in asking for money.
Yes,
So
it's true. It is true. And yeah, it's true. I cannot agree with you more.
yeah, I mean, we just have to be mindful of that.
And asking for a line of credit for a business is not unusual, right? That's just, you don't, and typically, like you said, people, I mean, it just comes up in business. It's not unusual. And
Right.
so, you wonder, is everyone getting this type of scrutiny?
Exactly.
Yeah. When everyone goes in the bank, are they getting, this level of scrutiny from the bank? And you wonder.
Yeah. And I haven't used a line of credit before. I'm like, I don't really think I need it, but it's just a safety net just to have in place. And so, hopefully if I ever go back and ask for more, like I don't get that same level of scrutiny, because y'all see that I haven't even used the line. I'm paying a fee every year just to have it. But yeah, it's like we kind of have to prove ourselves. And that's something that, it's just very disheartening a lot of times. But
it is.
I'm glad it worked out in the end, and you were able to work out the deal that made you feel comfortable. So I want to just ask a couple more questions. I can't believe we've already been talking for half an hour. This time has gone by so fast. These are kind of more, I guess, like technical questions about buying versus renting. Do you plan on like using the space in the future for something else? Like, is this something you plan on maybe passing down to family? As you mentioned, it's a legacy, it's a part of your legacy. So what are your future plans for the space?
The future plans, either rent it out, once we're finished, once I decide, I'm not doing this anymore, either, rent. My kids are not interested in the business, so that's not something. So it really just depends. So the future plans would be if I decide to sell the business, but not the building, right? So you could buy the business and rent the building from me. I could just rent close the business and rent the building out to another business, one in the medical field or one similar, or sell it, but the main thing is to leave it for my kids, and they can decide ultimately what they want to do with it, whether they want to rent it, do they have a business that they can use it for. So I feel like, it's really opened up a lot of different options for me, just in terms of what I can do in the future financially.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great investment tool. And it's about investing in your future, right? So you don't have to just live in like the here and now in your business. Like there's a future benefit to owning this space. And it's a foundation for something long-term that maybe your kids don't want to be owners of a clinic, but they wouldn't mind being landlords of this building. Right. Mm-hmm. And so rent does give you more flexibility, but it doesn't give you that control and potential for the future. And I think that's kind of the difference is what I'm seeing. If you're going to be in it long-term, think about some long-term investments that you can make that will eventually pay off.
Yes, agreed. And that's what I thought about, at the end of this business, when it's all said and done, what do I want to have and what do I want to have accomplished financially, because I love what I do. I'm an SLP, but after so much business training, they start to train you to think like a business owner.
And you have to think about your exit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Figure out And I'm like, okay, this is just going to be a part of our exit strategy, not just renting someone else's building, which is okay. We did that for a lot of years. But now once I really started thinking about the future, I started, thinking about how buying could really change that.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you heard of any like ways that you can use the building to help you with like tax strategies and stuff like that? So I know some people will buy a building and then they'll rent it from themselves. Have you heard about, are you planning on doing something like that? Or
So we actually do that. So the building purchased under an LLC. That is not my company. So a separate LLC was actually established for the business. And so the LLC purchased the building and I rent from the LLC.
Wow. That's like the ultimate, I feel like, strategy for, having an asset and then using that asset to create even more advantage for your business and for owning that property. So that's amazing. Yeah, I've heard of people doing that before. I wasn't quite sure if that's like very common or
I have the privilege of having, other friends who are business owners, not necessarily in the field. And I have a friend who purchased a lot of restaurants and they're all set up under separate LLCs, like their own entities. And so, yes, it's pretty common. And I think even the bank talked about it. And then we got an attorney, figured out, the process of that and the benefits. And so, yes, decided to.
Well, that's good to know. So if you're listening, think about, if you decide to purchase a building, how you can use that and leverage that by renting the building from yourself. Yes. I love that strategy. So would you ever consider buying another commercial building?
Yes, I would. Okay. Absolutely would. And I think, it's probably one of my goals over the next 5 years is to have another one.
Nice. Yeah. I feel like once you start to kind of see the benefits of those types of investments, it's like, okay, I see the benefit of this. And I like, to me, I mean, the hard part is getting the property, but then after that, it's easy. You just have to maintain it, right? So then let's get another one so that you have more properties and you're accumulating more assets. So I've done, I've done investments in residential real estate, and I really do enjoy the ease of making money with those investments versus other, investments that require more time or more money or more risk. So real estate is one thing that when you buy it, it's going to appreciate, right? And that's what I like about it.
And that's what I love about it as well. And, even it's just sometimes things seem, having a commercial space sounds, it just sounds just like, oh, I'm going to own a commercial space. Yeah. It sounds then going through the process, like, well, can I do it? And then after I did it, all I have to do is do something once or even see someone else do it, right? Because I know once someone knocks down a barrier and something gets done, then I know it can be duplicated. And so now I'm excited because I said, even if it's not easy, I know that I can do it.
Yeah, you've done it already. So now you can just duplicate it.
Yes.
Well, I'm so inspired by your story and kind of you sharing the journey with us. So thank you for stopping in today and dropping all those gems. If you're listening, make sure you follow Hasina's clinic. Do you want to tell us about your clinic and where they can find information about it?
Yes. So our website, globalspeechandrehab.com, is where we kind of keep everything updated on our website. We're on Instagram.
Okay.
Not a big social media person. Yeah. Just in general, but the clinic is on Instagram at Global Speech Rehab.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Hasina. I really enjoyed our conversation today, and I'll talk to you later.